I never imagined I'd collaborate so intimately with my son during a profound artistic session. Our hearts pounded, and boundaries blurred beyond recognition. But that evening, everything shifted. Hello, I'm Madison, 42 years old, a wife, a mother, and someone who stumbled into an emotional space I never foresaw. How did a simple painting session transform into the most precarious emotional territory I've ever entered? Have you ever felt acknowledged by someone in a way you didn't even realize you yearned for? Share your reflections in the comments below. Was it solitude, vulnerability, or something far deeper that led me there? I'm eager to hear your viewpoints. My narrative commenced on a frigid January morning when winter had cloaked the outdoors in a thick, silent layer of snow. The world outside appeared still, yet my mind was anything but. My son, Logan, a gifted 21-year-old artist, had retreated into the room he designated his studio. It was a corner of our home that Logan had reimagined as his personal realm, teeming with unfinished canvases, paint jars, and scattered brushes. That morning, I tightly wrapped myself in a heavy robe to fend off the piercing cold that seeped through every crevice of the house and settled at the kitchen table with a steaming cup of coffee. Logan had stayed up late painting the night before, and I couldn't bring myself to wake him early. As I silently gazed out at the frost-covered window, the familiar creak of the stairs resonated through the hushed house. "Good morning, Mom," Logan greeted in a steady voice, clutching a cup of tea and a still wet painting. His hair was tousled, his face still bore hints of sleepiness, but his eyes gleamed with intense excitement. Logan carefully propped the artwork against the kitchen counter. I smiled, sensing the vibrant energy emanating from him, even amidst the freezing winter. "Did you sleep well last night?" I inquired, a blend of curiosity and concern in my tone. Logan shrugged, a shy smile gracing his face. "I got caught up working on something. Do you want to see?" I nodded, my heart swelling with keen anticipation. Logan turned the painting, and the moment I saw it, I gasped softly. It was a breathtaking piece. The depiction of a person bathed in soft light, radiating a mix of strength and vulnerability. The depth it conveyed was profound, far exceeding what I believed a 21-year-old could capture. "It's beautiful, Logan," I whispered sincerely. "You possess a rare talent." Logan blushed faintly, a hint of red coloring his cheeks. "Thank you, Mom. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have reached this point." We shared a moment of silence, no words needed. That unspoken understanding ran deep between mother and son, between two solitary souls beneath the same cold roof. My husband, the man I had called my partner for decades, was a good man, but his profession and his outside interests had consistently kept him away from home. That absence lingered like a quiet specter in my life, leaving behind voids I had gradually learned to accept. But in that instant, looking at Logan, my son, who had matured into a remarkable man right before my eyes, I knew one thing for certain. We shared a powerful emotional connection, one I cherished deeply. That afternoon, as the faint sunlight filtered through the frost-covered windows, my curiosity became irresistible. I quietly made my way to Logan's studio. The room was permeated with the aroma of oil paint, aged canvas, and the woody scent of handcrafted frames. A soft golden light seeped in, casting a serene beauty over the unfinished paintings. Logan stood before the easel, his brush moving with absolute focus. He looked up when he noticed me, a slight smile on his face, half apologetic, half inviting. "Curious about what I'm working on, Mom?" Logan teased, his eyes glowing with familiar warmth. I smiled and stepped softly inside. "Can I see it?" Logan leaned aside, revealing the painting. It was a series of hands. Each hand captured a different emotion, painted with strokes both delicate and powerful. A trembling hand of pain, a soft hand of comfort, a clenched hand of determination. I couldn't conceal my admiration. "They're beautiful, Logan. You always perceive things others often overlook." Logan set down his brush and turned to look at me with a thoughtful gaze. "I want to start a new series, Mom, about the human body, but not merely its form. I want to paint emotions, connections, things words can't express." My heart stirred. Logan's words resonated deeply, highlighting my emotional solitude. The place where I had buried my loneliness, my longing to be heard, to be seen, to be understood. I nodded, whispering softly, "You always have a very unique way of perceiving the world, Logan." In that moment, I felt the invisible bond between us tighten a little more. Not just mother and son, but two solitary souls finding a rare harmony. A cold breeze slipped through the window cracks, lifting the curtain slightly, as if to underscore the heavy stillness in the room. That evening, the house felt even emptier as my husband, as usual, was absent for a bowling night with his friends. It was just Logan and me, two warm presences against a freezing winter. I sat in the living room, idly flipping through an old magazine, trying to occupy myself with a false sense of busyness to mask the emptiness. Suddenly, Logan emerged from the studio, carrying a small box. The light from the fireplace reflected in his eyes, making them appear as if they were burning. "Mom, I have an idea," Logan said, placing the box in front of me, his voice brimming with excitement. I looked up, surprised. "What is it?" Logan rubbed his hands together as if attempting to contain his excitement. "I want to paint you. Not just a regular portrait, but to paint you the way I truly see you." I froze. Not because of the idea of being painted, but because of the way Logan looked at me. Sincere, earnest, as if I were his entire world. "There's a gift in the box," Logan continued, smiling a little shyly. "I want you to wear it when you pose." My heart raced as I opened the small box. Inside was a red satin robe, smooth and shimmering under the firelight. Surprised and flustered, I looked up at Logan. His gaze was calm, sincere, without a trace of pressure or awkwardness, only trust, admiration, and a deep unspoken wish. "Let me paint you as you truly are." I sat still, my hands trembling slightly as I brushed my fingers over the smooth satin fabric. Its deep red color glowed like a smoldering fire in the freezing winter, both seductive and leaving me feeling more exposed than ever. Logan didn't rush me. He just stood there, his eyes patient, respecting whatever decision I would make. I took a deep breath. Part of me, the mother, the woman who had long buried herself under layers of duty, hesitated. But another part, the one quietly yearning to be seen, to be felt, stirred restlessly to answer. "All right," I whispered, barely recognizing my own voice. A bright smile broke across Logan's face. Without hurrying, he nodded and pointed toward the staircase. "I'll get everything ready. You can change and come down when you're ready." I hugged the box to my chest, walking slowly upstairs. Each step felt like it was stretching the space between my reason and my emotions. The bedroom door closed behind me. Alone, I stood before the mirror. I slipped off the thick, heavy clothes, revealing skin no longer taut as in my youth, but still bearing the softness of a woman seasoned by time. I draped the robe over my shoulders. The cool satin slid over every curve, clinging to my body as if it had been made just for me. Standing before the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. A mother, a wife, a woman, living in a body seemingly worn down by time and obligations. Yet, at that moment, my eyes suddenly lit up. I realized that deep inside, I was still there. Madison, full of desires, intense emotions, and dreams that had never been voiced. I pulled the robe tighter around myself, gathering all my courage to go downstairs. Logan had rearranged the living room. The armchair was pulled closer to the roaring fireplace. A soft white curtain hung loosely behind it, serving as a backdrop for the flickering firelight. The space was filled with a gentle, warm, dreamlike glow. When I appeared, Logan looked up. His gaze lingered on me, openly admiring. It wasn't the gaze of a child anymore, nor entirely that of a grown man, but a strange merging of both reverence, wonder, and the breath of something unnamed. "You look beautiful," Logan said, his voice low and slightly hoarse. I smiled faintly, trying to hide my fluster, and walked over to sit in the chair as he directed. "I want you to sit however feels most comfortable, most natural, Logan instructed, brush poised in his hand. I nodded, letting myself sink into the warmth of the fireplace, letting go of the daily worries weighing down my shoulders. The soft clinks of the brush against the palette, the steady sound of the first strokes on the canvas, filled the silence like a calm and even heartbeat. Logan painted silently, occasionally glancing up, his deep dark eyes studying every detail. The curve of my wrist, the way the light spilled over my collarbone, the gentle folds of the robe across my shoulders. I could feel Logan carefully observed my pose, dedicated to capturing each detail artistically, tender yet deliberate. Each time our eyes accidentally met, I felt deeply moved and emotionally stirred. No one said anything, but we both felt it. Something quietly shifting between us. Our relationship transitioned into unfamiliar emotional territory. No longer just artist and muse, something else. An intense emotional vulnerability was quietly developing between us on that silent winter night. The firelight from the fireplace reflected on the walls, bathing the room in flickering shades of orange and red. Every time Logan's brush swept across the canvas, I felt as if he was not only painting my outward form, but also touching the deepest emotions within me. I sat still, unmoving, but inside, every sense was stretched taut like a string about to snap. After a while, Logan put the brush down, wiped his hands with a small cloth, and approached me. "Are you cold, Mom?" And his voice was warm and gentle. I shook my head, but my heart trembled harder than the cold wind outside. "I just want to adjust a little," Logan said, his voice so soft it seemed afraid to disturb the enveloping stillness. I nodded without speaking. He reached out, gently lifting my chin so the light from the fireplace could fall across my face. Logan's hand was warm and steady, but the closeness made my heart clench. His gaze held mine, unwavering, unhesitant. And in that moment, I saw in Logan's eyes a boundless trust, a silent admiration that needed no words. I should have looked away. I knew. But I noticed he had clenched his hand as if gathering courage. "I've never seen anyone as beautiful as you are right now." I swallowed hard. How long had it been since I last heard such words? Not from Carter, my increasingly distant husband. Not from those around me whose glances had become cold and indifferent. Only Logan, with his unhidden sincerity, made me feel seen, made me feel valued. I smiled, a trembling smile more than a joyful one. "You're always too good to me," I whispered. But in our eyes, both of us knew that what had just passed between us was a deep, unnameable connection. Still within boundaries, but undeniable. The room fell into silence again. Logan picked up the brush, returning to the canvas. But between us, something had quietly and permanently shifted. I sat there, letting the fire gently warm my satin robe, feeling Logan's occasional glances. No longer the gaze of a child, but a quiet acknowledgement full of feeling. Time flowed slowly, as if every second became thick and unforgettable. When Logan put down his brush again, he approached and sat in front of me, his deep brown eyes silently asking, not with words, but with a patient waiting. I placed my hand gently on his tousled hair, an unspoken response, a light, simple touch, like two souls finding each other after a long, lonely journey. There were no words, no lines crossed, only presence, only a quiet, tender feeling, enough for two wounded souls to know that they were no longer alone. After that kiss, the room seemed to become more suffocating due to the unspoken emotions. Logan was still sitting in front of me, his face a mixture of fear and hope. I stood up, took a few steps towards the fireplace, needing some distance to catch my breath. But I could clearly feel Logan's gaze still following my every slightest movement. "Mom," he called softly, his voice choked in his throat. I turned back, touched those eyes that contained all the sincerity, longing, and even confusion. I softly spoke, but then stopped because are there any words strong enough to explain the emotions swirling in my heart right now? Are there any words to justify what just happened? Logan slowly stood up, walked towards me, not in a hurry, not in a rush. Each step felt like a silent question, and I was the only one who held the answer. "Do you regret it, Mom?" you asked, your voice trembling but your gaze resolute. I looked at you for a long time, sensing the fear, the innocence, and the budding courage in that question. Regret. I regret letting myself be lonely for too long. I regret having let emptiness fill every crevice of my heart. But this moment, I have no regrets. I shook my head softly, but firmly. Logan let out a long breath as if he had just lifted a heavy burden. He stepped closer, and this time I didn't back away. Logan's hand found mine, gripping tightly, warmly. Without words, we both understood that between us a fragile boundary had been broken, and it would never be able to be rebuilt as it once was. "Will you be sad, Mom?" Logan whispered, his eyes seeming to hold me. "I just want you to be happy, Mom." I smiled sadly, my heart tightening. Since when did the one who needed protection become the one searching for the lost piece of my soul? I gently stroked his face, the gesture tender like the years when he was a child, and I used to lull him to sleep every afternoon. "Don't." But this time, the touch was no longer just a maternal affection. It contained something deeper, more painful, and also more beautiful. We stood very close to each other, and when Logan gently reassured me with a supportive touch on my shoulder, I closed my eyes. A simple, innocent kiss, but it made my tears uncontrollably flow. Not because of regret, not out of fear, but because for the first time in many years I was seen by someone, truly seen with all my vulnerability, hurt, and longing. Logan stood beside me quietly, offering silent comfort and support, as if wanting to shield me from the world outside. I let myself lean on him, letting go of all the strong facades I had been carrying for so long. "I'm here," Logan whispered in my ear. "I will not leave you alone anymore. I know that promise was naive. I know that what is happening is a mistake in the eyes of society, of norms." But at that moment, in the room filled with warm light, there were only two people, two lonely souls who found each other. I let myself fall into that embrace, at least for tonight, because tomorrow I'm not sure we will have enough courage to face reality. But tonight, in this biting winter, I am alive, to feel, to be loved. The next morning, the soft winter sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a gentle yellow hue across the room. I woke up, the blanket still warm, and my heart heavy with everything that had happened. Logan was no longer there. I sat up, leaning against the headboard, listening to the silence around me. A silence no longer peaceful, but filled with anticipation and confusion. Downstairs, I could hear the faint clink of dishes. I quickly threw on a robe and made my way downstairs, my heart racing. Logan was standing by the kitchen counter, preparing breakfast as if everything were normal. His gaze met mine, and in that moment, I saw all the worry, love, and regret mingling in his eyes. "Good morning, Mom." Logan spoke first, his voice deep but slightly trembling. "Would you like some coffee?" I nodded, hardly believing my own voice would be steady if I spoke. Logan poured coffee into my favorite mug, careful as though every little action might shatter the fragile barrier between us. I took the cup, my hand lightly brushing against his. That touch, though brief, was enough to make both of us freeze. Logan looked at me, wanting to say something, but then he stopped himself. I sat down at the dining table, my hands gripping the cup tightly, clinging to the last fragile bit of normalcy.
"Mom."
Finally, Logan spoke hesitantly. "I'm sorry if everything that happened last night made you feel uncomfortable." I looked up, our eyes locking. In that gaze, there was no accusation, only a quiet pain. I slowly shook my head.
"No, Nate."
Then my voice was hoarse. I don't regret it, but we need time to understand what this means." Logan pressed his lips together, nodding. He sat down across from me, the space between us, both intimate and laden with unspoken words. We sat in silence for a long while. Outside, the snow began to fall gently, each flake landing softly on the windowsill. I watched the snowflakes, wondering when my life had drifted so far from everything I once knew. I used to be a strong, determined woman, a model wife, a devoted mother. Yet here I was, sitting in front of my son, holding emotions I couldn't name. "I know," I said slowly. "Everything between us last night would be wrong in the eyes of the world outside." Here Logan clenched his fists, placing them on the table. "I don't care about the world outside," he said, his voice choked. "I only care about you. I don't want you to be alone another day." My heart tightened. Had anyone ever looked at me like that over all these years? Had anyone ever seen the loneliness in me as clearly as Logan did right now? "But you deserve a full life, Logan," I whispered. "Not because of me. Not because of my shortcomings." Logan shook his head vigorously. "You don't understand," he said, his eyes bright with emotion. "You're not a deficiency. You are the light in my life, the reason I want to be a better person." Tears silently spilled from my eyes. I put my hand over my mouth, not wanting to cry aloud. Logan stood up, walked around the table, and knelt in front of me. "I deeply care about you, and never want you to feel alone again." I collapsed, resting my head on his shoulder, no longer resisting, no longer denying. Only two people holding each other in a world that they knew would never accept them. But in that moment, there was only truth. And the truth was I had been seen. I had been loved in a way I had once thought I would never experience again in this life. That morning, we sat together for a long time, as if the moment we parted, everything would shatter. Logan was still kneeling in front of me, his hands tightly gripping mine, his gaze urgent, as if he wanted to etch this moment deep into his heart. I gently lifted his chin, forcing myself to meet his eyes filled with admiration, longing, and a silent pain. I took a deep breath, trying to regain my composure. "Logan," I whispered, "we need to think this through carefully. What happened last night, it's not just a fleeting emotion. It will change everything." He nodded, unwavering. "I know, and I accept it." My heart tightened while the snow continued to fall outside. Inside, I was burning with emotions rising within me. A part of me wanted to run away, to hide from the truth that was laid so bare between us. But another part, the weak part, the part that had been lonely for so long, held on, longing to stay just a little longer. I stood up and Logan followed, never taking his eyes off me. The distance between us now felt so fragile. A single touch was enough to make all boundaries completely break down. "I'm going for a walk," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I need to think." Logan didn't stop me. He just nodded slowly, his eyes filled with the pain he tried to hide. I threw on my coat and stepped outside. The cold air hit my face, making me feel a little more awake. The snow was still falling, its delicate flakes sparkling under the weak winter morning light. I walked down this snow-covered path, my footprints left behind like traces of the past, impossible to erase. I thought about Logan, his gaze, the words he whispered in my ear last night. I thought about the long years with Carter. He was the husband who felt absent even when physically present, the man who let me silently fade away within my own life. And then I considered myself, the woman who once held dreams, who once loved with fervor, who once believed she merited recognition and affection. When had I become so utterly lost? A frigid breeze swept through, causing a shiver to run down my spine. I clutched my coat tighter, as if to safeguard the meager warmth that remained. Yet, the true warmth I knew didn't originate from the garment. It stemmed from Logan's gaze, from his steadfast embrace, from the sensation of being seen and cherished after so many years of dissolving into obscurity. My gaze drifted back toward the house, my heart burdened with a heavy weight. I understood that I couldn't continue evading. A decision was imperative, a choice that would irrevocably alter everything. As I opened the door and stepped inside, Logan was already seated on the couch, awaiting my return, as if my very presence encompassed his entire world. Upon seeing me, he quickly rose. His eyes were alight with both hope and concern. "Mom," he began, a tremor in his voice. "Have you given it some thought?" I approached him slowly. My hands quivered slightly as I reached out to touch Logan's cheek. He leaned into my palm like a small cat seeking comfort, closing his eyes and exhaling deeply. "Logan," I said, my voice catching, "I cannot deny what we felt, but you must understand, you still have your whole future ahead of you." Logan opened his eyes and met my gaze directly, his eyes burning with an intense light. "I know what I'm doing. I have no regrets, young man." I gently squeezed his hand, as though drawing strength from the young man I had raised, loved, and now loved in a way the world would never sanction. And I whispered, "Let time guide us, Logan. We don't need to rush, but I can't pretend that nothing has happened." A faint smile touched his lips. Logan leaned in and gently reassured me with kind, soothing words, tender, respectful, and filled with unspoken promises. "I'll wait," he whispered in my ear, "no matter how long." And for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to believe that perhaps somewhere, love, though unconventional, though deemed wrong by societal norms, could still blossom if we dared to heed our hearts. Time progressed, but that winter night remained seared into my memory like a sensitive wound. Day by day, Logan and I settled into a new routine, quiet, cautious, yet not concealed. We refrained from labeling what was unfolding between us, neither rushing it nor attempting to deny it. We simply existed together, permitting small moments to intertwine into a feeling that was both sweet and perilous. Carter, my husband, appeared utterly oblivious to any change. He remained engrossed in his work, with prolonged business trips and phone calls that concluded abruptly with, "I have to go to a meeting." I continued to manage everything, a familiar shadow in the background. But my heart was no longer whole. Each time I looked into Logan's eyes, I knew I had ventured too far to retreat. There were evenings when Logan would be drawing in the studio, and I would sit beside him, attempting to read a book on which I could barely concentrate. A simple glance up, and I would meet his gaze, a look potent enough to dismantle every barrier I had erected within myself. Thus, amidst the strokes of his brush and gentle gestures, our emotional connection deepened, becoming profoundly meaningful and mutually supportive. One rainy afternoon, Logan set aside his unfinished drawing and approached me. He knelt before the chair where I sat, taking my hand in his eyes more earnest than ever before. "Mom," Logan whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "I'm not going anywhere. I don't care what the world thinks. I just need you." I bit my lip, striving to hold back the tears. "Logan, don't." He shook his head, his gaze unwavering. "I know you're scared, but you're not fighting alone. I'm here." And in that instant, I knew I could no longer deny it. I cherished his presence as deeply as he cherished mine, a yearning to be seen, to be held, to be loved as an individual, not merely as a good mother or a beautiful wife. We embraced in that room, redolent with the scent of paint and the gentle drumming of rain outside. An embrace that transcended mere comfort, becoming a silent pledge that whether right or wrong, we would not let go. But reality seldom permits such happiness to endure indefinitely. On a night indistinguishable from any other, Carter returned home unexpectedly early. He entered the house to discover Logan and me seated together on the couch, closer than any father could ever accept. Carter's gaze froze as he surveyed the space between us, my face, Logan's expression. A deadly silence permeated the room. Logan swiftly released my hand, standing abruptly. I, too, fumbled instinctively, but in Carter's eyes, something had irrevocably shattered, though he uttered not a single word. "What's going on here?" Carter inquired, his voice unnervingly calm. I found myself speechless. Logan opened his mouth first, but I quickly squeezed his hand in a silent entreaty. "Don't." "It's nothing," I whispered, lowering my face like a guilty penitent. Carter stared at me for a long moment, his eyes growing colder, before he quietly turned away. The manner in which he ascended the stairs without a shout or scream wounded me 100 times more. That night, I lay awake. Logan didn't dare come into my room as he had before. Every sound in the house seemed to amplify, in the heavy silence. I understood in that moment that everything had changed forever. We had been exposed, not for any specific actions, but for the emotions that we could no longer conceal. And though Carter said nothing, I comprehended that what had been seen could not be unseen. One morning, Logan stood at my door, suitcase in hand. His eyes were red-rimmed, yet his gaze remained resolute. "I'm leaving," Logan said, his voice trembling. "I need time, and so do you." I nodded, swallowing my tears. No pleas, no goodbyes, just a fractured whisper. "Remember, wherever you are, I'll always love you." The door closed behind Logan. I stood there for a long time, silently in the empty house, listening to my heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. There are boundaries in life that, once crossed, leave no path for return. I am not proud of what transpired between Logan and me, nor am I attempting to justify it. All I know is that in that suffocating, cold moment, we perceived each other, not through the roles society imposed, but as raw, solitary human beings yearning for love. When Logan departed, I came to grasp a bitter truth. Love, if not situated in the appropriate place and time, can evolve into an unhealing wound. And there are mistakes, even those veiled in silence, that will resonate in every beat of one's heart. I don't know what the future holds. I only know that since that day, a part of me has been permanently broken, a part one will never recover. What are your thoughts on this story? Have you ever felt that loneliness and the desire to be seen could compel someone to go to such lengths? If you were in that situation, would you opt for silence to protect what you already possess? Or would you dare to confront the most forbidden emotions within your heart? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I genuinely look forward to hearing your insights, your authentic feelings, because who knows, through those words, we may all discover a part of ourselves.